Hi, this is the old bull for another reflection that can change your life. Stay until the end and find out ... We've been lied to, friend. Told that if we're not grinding, pushing, producing, we're wasting time. That real men don't stop. That warriors don't get tired. But let me ask you, what kind of strength keeps going until it breaks? What kind of man ignores the fire burning him from the inside out? I've seen good men, strong men lose themselves trying to be everything for everyone, except for themselves. The world won't tell you this, but I will. Resting is not quitting. It's not weakness. It's not failure. It's wisdom. The kind you don't learn in books, but in scars, in silence, in the stillness after the storm. You don't sharpen your knife while swinging it, and you sure as hell don't rebuild your soul while drowning in noise. So if you're tired, broken, stuck, maybe the answer isn't more effort. Maybe it's less noise, less pressure, less pretending. What you're about to hear might go against everything you've been taught about being a man. But I promise you, it could be the very thing that saves your fire. You ever sit there in silence, thinking something's wrong with your soul, but can't quite name it? Like the weight on your chest ain't grief, but it ain't peace either. I've been there, and let me tell you, what we call sadness sometimes, it's just plain old fatigue. You've been pushing through the storm, carrying the weight of your world, and forgetting to breathe. A real man, a strong man, knows pain, but he also needs to know when that pain is just his body and soul begging for rest. Remember walking through my days, like I was dragging a wagon full of bricks behind me. No joy, no rage, just a steady, dull ache that made everything feel heavier than it should. That's not depression. That's a man who's burned out, running on fumes, trying to be a good father, a steady husband, a reliable provider. And when you don't stop to reset, you start bleeding in ways no one can see. Even cowboys get tired. Even a man with boots on and a saddle waiting needs a moment by the fire . So if you're feeling lost, stuck, worn out, maybe it ain't your purpose that's gone. It's just your energy. Maybe you don't need to fix your life. Maybe you just need to sit on the porch, feel the forest breeze, and let your mind go quiet. Maybe you need to sleep in the bed instead of solving the world by midnight. Because tired doesn't mean weak, and silence doesn't mean broken. Sometimes, being a man means knowing when to stand firm and when to sit still. There's something sacred about knowing when to pause. Not because you're giving up, but because you're choosing to last. Most men I've known will keep going until they collapse, thinking endurance is the same as strength. But a real man, a wise man, knows better. He knows that true rest isn't an interruption. It's part of the path. It's like watering a horse on the trail. You don't stop because you're lost. You stop so you don't lose the horse. I've ridden through forests where the only sound was the creak of leather and the rhythm of my own breath. Long hours in the saddle taught me that rest doesn't come. When everything is done, it comes when it's needed. I've seen too many strong men fall because they refused to take a breath. They confused exhaustion with failure. They feared stillness more than burnout. But listen, there's nothing noble in running yourself into the ground. Even Jesus, the greatest protector of them all, stepped away from the crowds and went to the wilderness to be a lone dot. So if you're in the middle of a long haul raising kids, building a life, fighting through your own doubts, don't wait for everything to fall apart before you rest. Don't wait until your hands are shaking and your soul's gone quiet. Find your version of the campfire. Maybe it's fishing at dawn. Maybe it's chopping firewood with no one around. Maybe it's driving that old truck out to nowhere just to breathe mountain air. Whatever it is, make space for it. Because if you don't, you won't make it to the end of the trail. A man doesn't just fall apart all at once. He cracks in quiet ways, missed meals, shorter temper, eyes that don't light up like they used to. You start skipping your morning routine. You stop answering the phone. The boots stay by the door instead of on your feet. These aren't just bad days, my friend. They're warning signs. The body speaks before it breaks, and the soul whispers before it screams. And a real man, a strong man, learns to listen before it's too late. I once knew a rancher who worked his land like it was a battlefield. Never stopped, never paused, never said a word about how tired he was. Until one day, he was just ... gone. Not dead, but hollow. His wife said he hadn't smiled in 6 months. That's what happens when you ignore the small signals. You don't just burn out, you go numb. You lose the fire, the identity, the meaning. And when a man forgets who he is, he becomes a shadow of himself . So what are your signs? For me, it's when I stop lighting my cigar before sunset, when I let the axe sit too long, when I stop watching the sky turn. That's when I know I'm running on empty. You've got to find those clues in your own life. It might be anger. It might be silence. It might be that feeling of being lost, even when you're home. But once you see it, don't wait. Pause. Reflect. Step off the trail before the ground gives out beneath you. Because pushing through isn't always courage. Sometimes it's how men disappear. We've been raised to believe that pausing makes use weak, that if a man steps aside for a moment, he's lost the fight. But that's a damn lie. Even the toughest cowboy unsaddles his horse at the end of the day, not because he's quitting the ride, but because he knows he's riding again. Tomorrow, you don't sharpen your blade while swinging it. You step back, breathe, and get it ready for the next strike. That's not failure. That's wisdom. I remember chopping firewood one cold morning. My arms were sore, sweat burning down my back, but I refused to stop. Took one more swing, and that axe slipped, split my glove clean open. Could have been. My hand, that day, taught me something. Resting isn't a delay, it's protection. It keeps your swing true. It keeps you in the fight longer. A tired man makes mistakes. A rested man endures. You don't sit down because you're weak. You sit down because you've still got miles to go . And maybe the world doesn't see that. Maybe they call it lazy when you step back. Let them talk. They don't know what it's like to carry quiet pain, to keep going when your heart's worn thin. But you do. You know the weight. You know the scars. And if you've made it this far, it means you know how to rise again. So don't be ashamed to stop for a while. You're not stepping away from your purpose, you're stepping toward it. And sometimes, the strongest move a man can make is to be still. Not all weariness comes from chopping wood or riding trails. Some of it settles in your bones from years of holding in what you can't say out loud. There's the tired that comes from a long day. And then there's the tired that comes from a long life. A tired mind needs quiet. A tired heart needs warmth. A tired soul? Well, sometimes it just needs to be seen. If you try to fix everything, with sleep, you'll wake up just as worn out because you didn't give your spirit what it truly needed. There was a time when I thought a weekend off would solve it. I canceled everything, stayed home, shut the world out. But instead of peace, I found more noise in my own head. That's when I realized I wasn't physically tired. I was emotionally drained. What I needed wasn't isolation. It was connection. I called an old friend, drove out to the woods, and we sat in silence by the fire. No fixing, no pretending. Just two old souls sharing the same weight. That night did more for me than any nap ever could dot. So ask yourself, what kind of tired are you? Are your hands sore, or is it your heart? Are you burnt out from doing too much, or from being too much for everyone? Maybe you need a walk through the forest, the crunch of leaves beneath your boots. Or maybe you need a journal, a cup of coffee, and the honesty to admit you're not okay. Rest isn't one size fits all. A man's got to learn what heals him and make space for it without shame. Because if you're trying to refill your tank with the wrong fuel, don't be surprised when the engine still won't start. A man can't cool off if he stays too close to the fire. That's just the truth. You can't heal in the same place that broke you. I've met men who took time off, but never stepped away from what was burning them out. They sat at home with their phones still buzzing, their heads still full of noise. That ain't rest. That's just changing the scenery while dragging the same weight. Real rest means putting down the rifle, walking out of the barn, and giving yourself permission to be unreachable for a while. Years ago, I felt myself coming undone. Not all at once, just little pieces. My thoughts got short, my laughter rare, and my fuse even shorter. So I packed up, left the ranch in the hands of someone I trusted, and drove north till the signal on my phone disappeared. For 3 days, I sat beside a river with nothing but a knife, some jerky, and the sound of running water. That's when it hit me, peace doesn't chase you. You have to go to it. You have to leave the weight behind, even if just for a while. Now, I know it's not always easy. Maybe you've got kids, a business, folks who depend on you. But even a father needs a day away to be a better protector. Even a husband needs a breath of silence to love stronger. Whether it's a hike, a weekend in a cabin, or turning your phone off and sitting on the porch with just the star step. Back from the noise. Disconnect to reconnect. Because you can't hear your own heartbeat when you're drowning in everybody else's voices. Rest isn't something that just happens. It doesn't show up uninvited, like rain on a summer day. You have to choose it, protect it, and let it unfold without guilt. Most men I know try to rest while checking emails, solving problems in their head, or worrying about what's waiting on the other side. That's not rest. That's just a pause under pressure. A real man, a good man, learns to carve out time that doesn't owe anything to anyone. Rest isn't a reward for exhaustion. It's a responsibility to your future strength. I remember once trying to take a break after a tough season. I sat by the fire with a cigar, but my mind kept running laps. Bills, schedules, expectations. The fire was burning, but I wasn't warming up. I was still cold on the inside. That's when I learned the difference between stopping your body and stilling your soul. Real rest begins when you decide that nothing else matters for a while. When you let go of the noise. When you stop trying to fix and just let yourself be . And that takes courage. It takes intention. You've got to put it on the calendar like it's sacred, because it is. Maybe it's Sunday mornings, a quiet drive in your truck, or fishing where no one knows your name. Whatever it is, make space for it and guard it like your life depends on it, because in many ways, it does. You weren't built to run wide open without breaks. Even the wilderness takes seasons to breathe. And if nature knows when to rest, so should you. You don't fall off a cliff without first ignoring the loose gravel under your boots. The truth is, men rarely break in one day. We chip, we crack, then one day we shatter. But it never starts with the big stuff. It starts with the little things we refuse to address. That's why I always tell men to pause before they're forced to. Pull over before the engine smokes. Sit down before your legs give out. You weren't made to run without stopping, and you sure as hell weren't made to pretend you're invincible. Were seasons in my life where I thought rest was a luxury, something you earned after collapsing. But life taught me otherwise. I learned to take small pauses, quiet walks at dusk, 30 minutes with a pipe and a good book, or just turning off my phone after dinner. Those moments seemed small at the time, but they saved me. They kept the fight inside me from boiling over. They reminded me that being a stoic man isn't about carrying it all. It's about knowing when to set it down. So maybe you need to ask yourself, when was the last time you paused without a crisis forcing your hand? Not because you were overwhelmed, but because you are wise. Rest doesn't always mean retreat. Sometimes it's a strategy, a reset, a way to stay in the saddle longer without falling off. The fire inside a man needs oxygen, not just fuel, and a small breath today might be the very thing that keeps you from burning out tomorrow. There's a kind of tired that doesn't show in your body. It shows in your soul when a man never slows down. He forgets who he is beneath the motion. The to-do list becomes his identity. The noise becomes his compass. And little by little, the man he used to be, the one who loved the morning sky, who laughed from the gut, who thought deeply and felt freely, starts to fade. He's still moving, still producing, but something sacred inside him goes missing. I've lived that. I filled my days with work, tasks, responsibilities. I became the cowboy who always showed up, always delivered. But somewhere in the middle of all that doing, I stopped being. I couldn't hear my own thoughts without a deadline, whispering in the background. That's when I realized busyness can be a drug. It numbs you from the weight, from the fear, from the quiet pain you'd rather not face. But what's the cost? You lose touch with your inner fire. You forget what it means to just be a man, not just a machine dot. So if it feels like you've been running forever, stop. Just stop. Not forever, not irresponsibly, just long enough to remember who's under the armor. Go back to the trail. Breathe in the forest. Watch the sun melt behind the hills. Let the quiet speak. Because if you never disconnect from the world, you'll eventually disconnect from yourself. And when a man forgets his own voice, he starts mistaking noise for purpose. Stillness isn't emptiness. It's where you remember your name. Man who gives everything and keeps nothing for himself eventually runs dry. You can't pour from an empty cup, no matter how noble your intentions. I've met fathers who broke their backs for their families, husbands who carried the weight of the world in silence, protectors who never let their guard down, and in the end, they forgot to tend to their own soul. And when a man neglects his soul, he doesn't just suffer, everyone around him does too. Love dies in exhaustion. Patience fades in burnout. I've been there, sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by the people I love most and still feeling distant. Not because I didn't care, but because I was too worn out to be present. I thought I was doing right by being strong, by pushing through, by never saying, I need help. But what I needed was rest, solitude, time to gather myself so I could show up fully again. It's not selfish, it's strategic. You sharpen the axe so you can keep chopping wood. You take care of the man so the warrior can keep standing dot. So don't wait until you're falling apart to tend to yourself. Make space for rest, reflection, and silence. Spend time in nature. Talk to God. Go fishing. Light a cigar without needing a reason. Because your strength isn't just in how much you can carry. It's in knowing when to step back and reset. The people who depend on you don't need a perfect man. They need a whole one. And being whole starts with treating yourself like you matter. Because you do dot, so now I'll ask you, brother, when was the last time you truly rested? Not just slept. I mean, truly let go. When did you last step away from the weight and breathe like your soul depended on it? If you're always carrying, always fixing, always showing up for everyone but yourself, how long do you think you'll last? And more importantly, what kind of man will you become if you don't stop to reconnect with who you really are? You can't lead if you're lost. Can't protect if you're broken. Can't love if you're numb. So I challenge you, yes, you right there, to make rest part of your discipline. Don't wait until the collapse. Choose now to pause, to breathe, to remember the man you are under all that pressure. Because the world needs that man, the real. You, not just the worn-out version you've been surviving with dot If this message stirred something in you, don't just sit on it. Tell me below, what's one thing you're going to change starting today? Let's talk. Let's reflect. And if you found value here, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. This campfire doesn't burn without good men around it, and I'd sure be glad to see you here next time.